talent gets you so far, but hard work and consistency wins the game all the time. My motto has always been, if I can't beat you, I'm going to outlast you. And it's worked out, so far.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Our guest today is a professional coach, trainer to the stars, and bodybuilder with an extensive 20-year career, which was topped off by winning the first ever Mr. Classic Olympia at 47 years old. Today, he's well into his 50s with a physique that will be admired by anyone half of his age.
I will never say I'm retired because there's always going to be something I'll look for to compete in, with bodybuilding and fitness. As an athlete, just as a human, you have a limited time where you actually can be your best before it gets harder and harder. For me, to win on a stage is very temporary because life is the biggest stage, and that's where you really want to win. Compete to learn until you get to a certain level where you think you can actually win. I always tell people I'm a classic car with very low miles because every show you do and you go balls to the wall, you're kind of wearing your body out. It ages you. My motto has always been, if I can't beat you, I'm going to outlast you.
So please enjoy this week's episode with Mr. Danny Hester. Mr. Danny Hester, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
In Las Vegas, this is your second home, is it?
Yeah. Well, my wife's here, so it's got to be my first home.
Right.
If I said it was my second home, I'd be in trouble. So, yeah, nice and hot for 3 months out of the year, but other than that, I actually like it better than LA in a lot of ways. Less traffic, a lot less expensive, to live in. And I literally see more people in Vegas from LA than when I lived in LA, because everyone's always coming through here for some reason.
That's right.
And no one wants to drive. If I get invited to something in LA and it's, from Sherman Oaks and they might be in Manhattan Beach, which is not a far distance, but it can literally take you 2 hours or more. So you pass up on a lot of invites, You
just don't go anywhere, do you, really?
Yeah, you kind of, you go, if you're in that area and you happen to get invited, then you're going, But here, people call you up and they're like, hey, I just came to this convention, whatever I'm doing, come meet us at this pool party or whatever, and this nightclub. And I'm like, sure, it takes me literally 10 minutes.
It's a 10-minute, that's what I was surprised, yeah.
It's easy, and then you leave. So I actually see a lot more of my friends here. I was in LA for 2 weeks. I could not connect with very many people. Probably 80% of the people I was expecting to connect with, I did not get to connect with them there. And I'll probably see them here. It's just strange, It just shows how different both areas are on how people kind of network with each other.
So what's the gyms out like here? We're just talking about our friend Flex and his gym. Where do you like to work out when you're in Vegas then?
I go to all of them, depending on the area I'm in at the time. Like if I drop my wife off to go shopping or something and I'm in that area, I literally have about 8 free gym memberships since I moved here. And this seems to me like it's when I first came here, I thought I'd be a little homesick, but because the fitness industry is really booming out here and everything, entertainment, it's literally the sister city of LA. And the networking, I thought I was going to miss some of that, but none at all, because all the same people in LA are here. And all the gyms, a lot of the athletes have moved to Vegas. And so I see, more of those guys. I have training partners at all different gyms. And it's really nice, and there are more boutique gyms too, which after COVID, that seemed to really you thought it would hurt the gym industry because the home equipment and everything with COVID, everyone was like, oh, we don't need to join a gym now. We actually found out we can get in shape without a gym, but it's a different environment. You should be able to do both, but once you go to a gym and it's open and you like that environment and you get the energy off of other people, I think is the biggest thing. And there's a time and you see certain people and you just get that culture of it, it's hard to go back to home again. So I think, but I think the smaller gyms are doing better, or people will actually pay more money to go to those than the bigger chain gyms. I mean, the benefit the bigger gyms have is they're more available if you travel a lot. So you always want to have that. But I find people have more than one gym membership these days. Almost everybody. It's the craziest thing. you know. And so they'll have like their main gym, and then they'll have their traveling gym. That's much cheaper.
What are some of the interesting gyms that you've seen around here? Like we would, I'll use it again, but Flex's gym is pretty different. They've got a unique community.
Yeah.
They've got the equipment. Just it's almost like a reinvention of the '80s bodybuilding gyms, but done in a modern way.
Yeah.
Which you kind of didn't see for a while, and I like those types of gyms really. But are you seeing
Right.
anything different? You've been around in the industry for a long time. Are you seeing any new models that are people doing things differently?
There's a combination of old and new combined. Like I wouldn't even say Flex's gym, the Dragon Slayer, is kind of a old school type of gym because it doesn't have like like Gold's Venice. It has the traditional pictures of it kind of pays homage to all the old school athletes where he absolutely has no pictures on his walls of athletes. It's more of the murals and everything like that. It kind of has that, what's his name? They started a bunch of those Metro gyms type, where it's a big warehouse.
Metroplex, is it?
Metroplex, and they have the graffiti on the walls and stuff like that.
Self-made.
Self-made is a little bit like that. So it's got kind of that vibe to it. It has the grass, with the AstroTurf, kind of like a football field or soccer, field vibe to it. So you can do the weightlifting, but it's also letting you know that other athletes can train here too, for whatever to help their performance. So I'm more used to just straight bodybuilding, where it just pays homage to that culture itself, because we're the epicenter, and you come there to learn what we've been doing for decades, and it'll apply to any sport. I think you should train for your sport, and that's how I train a lot of my professional athletes, is all around get them strong and flexible and see where their weaknesses might be. But when it comes down to their sport, they need to train just their sport. A lot of these guys, you see them swinging the hammers and this and that. Unless you're actually an athlete that actually is performing swinging the hammer and hitting a tire, then you should do that. But I don't see wasting time doing that to train for like an MMA fighter or something, because I come from a wrestling background, collegiate wrestling, and our coach always told us the best way to train for wrestling is to just wrestle more, which is true. You just get really good at throws, if that's your style. Just certain movements you do over and over again. You could use a person that's heavier than you so you can get the strength built up on that, but just execute that same movement over and over again. And it definitely translates more than any other exercises to what they're doing.
I noticed there's been a move to more of the traditional bodybuilding style training.
Yeah.
In the last few years, particularly after COVID, you've now got women even that are doing that a lot more. What do you think is the appeal that's brought that back? Because even body shapes have changed.
Yeah.
It was kind of very skinny. Women wanted this look. Now they want a very different look. What do you think has driven that? Do you think it's social media that's kind of created?
Yes, for sure. Social media has driven so many different things to our culture in general. I mean, it's literally shaping our culture, and it's doing it in a international way. When before, you had it in certain areas. Now the younger generation and just people, everyone, are getting to see what other people are doing in India, in China, in Russia.
That's crazy.
So it really is like it's for us being in the fitness industry, I mean, it just opens up the world. It's not where people look at you and they're not quite sure. Like I was mentioning, with the posing, I'm known for my posing in bodybuilding, right? My performances and just the way I move and everything is a throwback to the classic era. And I see now these kids, teenagers, and everybody posing in the mirror when you go to a mainstream gym. They're doing front double bicep, a side chest, and it's like, wow, people wouldn't even really know what those were, And so I think that's really cool. And it's really cool when I'll actually give them a thumbs up, and they're like, oh, because a lot of them will kind of stop if they see me walk in or something, think I'm gonna judge them. But to me, that's just so inspirational. You know, it's like that's just an introductory of getting into the sport. So.
Introducing the next big thing in functional training, the Escape Barrow, a revolutionary training tool that combines a loaded farmer's carry with a sled push to develop hip, grip, and core strength. Developed in partnership with Pete Holman, inventor of the TRX Rip Trainer and Nautilus Glute Drive, the Escape Barrow can be rolled, pushed, dragged, and carried. The Escape Barrow packs a punch with an impressive load capacity of 440 pounds, and with a 2-stage galvanized paint covering process, it's also ideal for outdoor use. So head over to escapefitness.com/barrow. That's escapefitness.com/barrow to find out more. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
Yeah, I was talking this week. It's funny, I had a call with someone in Australia and someone in Thailand, and they're a long way away from here. And
right.
Yet when you were talking about what was going on in their market and they're involved in the business, it's amazing how they're seeing exactly the same things.
Yeah.
You know, the whole world seems to be much more connected now from that perspective.
Right, and it's actually seemed to be, it used to be about the individual, but now the individual, if they're not active and current, literally 15 minutes of fame is like 2 minutes of fame these days, because they want the newest content, the newest person out, and it's amazing how fast they forget and they look at the new person, you know. But the culture is what kind of stays, that's getting created, and each individual adds to it, you know. And so it's almost like a painting. So I could be one brushstroke, and then you could be another brushstroke, and you get all these different brushstrokes to make this picture, you know. And then when you start seeing the picture changes, the piece of art look different, is because everyone's little brushstrokes gets a little bit different each time. It's not the same. You know, the next person after me that's trying to do the same thing as me has a little bit of different spin on it. And then that's how it starts to change over time. So that's why it's important to really look at how you can add to the painting or make it a little bit different in a way that you would like to see it. And that's why it's such a collaboration now, we're talking about all over the world. So, you know, someone in Thailand or someone in Australia can influence people in America, which used to be unheard of, right? Because we think here we're the influencers, but that's changed, you know, in a lot of things.
I was listening to a video before you came. It was an interview that you did, and it was referring to, I guess, years ago, if you were a pro bodybuilder and you had some sponsorships, and you would be ready at certain times of the year, you'd have to be in shape.
Yeah.
But then you would kind of drop off, and you know, you go out of condition, you'd sort of bulk up a little bit, and you were saying, look, nowadays you kind of have to be ready all the time, prepared just to sort of step up and
Right.
I suppose is that good or bad?
I think it holds you to a higher standard all the time, and it keeps you from being complacent, because that's what happened to me. When I broke my hand, I had a little dip, and then COVID, I had a little dip, and I still have not, because I haven't really competed since then. And for me to compete really puts my standard high, just on every level, which brings up everything else in my life, because it just gets me so focused and disciplined. And that's one of the reasons I will never say I'm retired, because there's always going to be something I'll look for to compete in, you know, with bodybuilding and fitness. And that's the thing, is it could be stressful too, because then you have this vision of what someone else expects of you, especially when you look at the comment sections. That, I think, drives you more crazy and really can hurt your psyche in a negative way. But keeping yourself in the best you can, I think, is a positive thing, because I would like to step it up a little bit more.
Are you? Would you say you're in or out of condition at the moment?
I would say I'm probably about 65% of what I should be. Just strength-wise, you know, athleticism, like confidence. If I was to have to sprint there a few times because of something, what percentage of my brain thinks that I can do it, but I'm probably going to pull something, you know, the confidence level of being in fit, functional shape. And then aesthetic wise, you know, I know certain areas when I look in the mirror and assess myself, a little bit more body fat, shorter caps, just very like my standards, especially when I look at videos and pictures of myself, you know. And it's easier if you've been around as long as I have. There's so much from the archives you can pull from where you can just post those and it'll be a while before people know you're not in shape, right? So, and, but there's a point where you're like, yeah, you know, as an athlete, just as a human, you have a limited time where you actually can be your best before it gets harder and harder. And I don't want to one day wake up and go, wow, I should have been at this level, and I could have been at this level with a little more discipline, but I kind of was a little lazy and complacent, and now it takes me much more work to get there, where I took it for granted. So in a way, it's almost like you're given a gift, and you're committing fitness blasphemy, to a sense, in a sense, you know.
How do you balance you mentioned being able to run, from what I understand, you're not just about aesthetics, you're about functional,
Right.
you know, you look how, you want to perform how you look in some respects, where most people kind of look great, but if they had to go and run up a hill or move quickly, they're not able to do that. So what's your approach of combining both the aesthetics, of which you are known for, and the physical performance?
It all depends on what you're trying to achieve, you know? Like for me, I'm in the classic bodybuilding division, which is the throwback they created, which seems to be one of the most popular divisions now. I mean, the guy that has my title now is Chris Sebum. You know, I think he's got like 17 million followers, and I mean, he's just growing. I mean, people, it's amazing. I was at my niece's birthday party, and all her little friends were there, teenagers, you know, in high school, and the guys and everything. They're talking about Chris Sebum. I was like going, wow, you know. And my nephew was like, oh yeah, my uncle, you know, had that title. And they're like, what? And then he'll show them pictures of me, you know, standing next to Chris and everything. They're like, oh my gosh. And it's just like, wow, but that was only 6 years ago when I had his title. They completely forgot who I was. But that just shows you, you know. And does a lot of content. He comes from that generation. You know, he's half my age, and so...
He's half your age, is he?
Yeah.
How old are you?
I think I'm 54.
Wow.
Chris is 27, 28.
Oh, right, wow. And you competed in when you was 6 years ago?
I'll show you some pictures.
Yeah.
And at the Olympia. And...
Did you beat him at some point?
Yes. And no.
Yes and no.
Well, once he turned that corner, man, I mean, no one's beaten him for a while. Yeah. I was backstage because I did the live stream commentary this year at the Olympia when he was here in Vegas. And he came backstage, and I congratulated him, took some pictures with him. And I said, you know, Chris, how long do you want to do this? Because he's won it 4 times now. And I said, because I don't see anyone even coming close to beating you. Unless some of these guys that just all of a sudden come from nowhere, or some guy that placed in the top 5 just turns the corner and kind of did what you did, but I don't really see that. And I was like, you don't really have anything more to prove, and it's a tough sport, you know. And I don't know what these younger guys are doing these days, but I know for me, I can't be doing that. Just health reasons, you know. It's just pushing it to the limit too much for a trophy, you know, or titles. Because for me, I already won one. That's the Oscars of our sport, you know. So I don't have to feel like I'm obligated to keep winning it, and especially at my age. And that was a lot of stress when I first won. You would think I'd be very elated and just like, you know, in a bliss, but I was actually very depressed. It was heavy. It took me about 2 months to kind of get out of that whole obligated to do this again, because I really pushed myself hard. And I was proud of it, because I always say, I would rather take second, but know I worked harder than I've ever worked, than to win and know I could have worked harder.
How did you feel then when you won?
I felt like I've never worked harder in my life, and I won. Thank God. So that's a good feeling. You know?
Yeah.
That's like that payoff. You can't beat that. You know, it wasn't because the other people weren't as good or they were off or whatever. You know, so
What did you have to bring to that event mentally and physically that you probably hadn't done before, or in a different way to before? Like how would you sort of...
because there's an opportunity there for me, unlike before when I retired, because the trend way before social media was about the bigger guys. Because when I first came into it, the judging criteria was about the best physiques wins. Doesn't matter if this guy was much bigger, you know, and you were much smaller. If you were more complete, you were more conditioned, balanced, they were going to choose you to win. And it happened. That's when I came up throughout the 80s. That's what I was seeing when I was in high school and got to meet a lot of these guys and go to Gold's Venice back then. And then I started competing myself, and I was beating the bigger guys. But there was a point where the industry started changing, and the guys that were getting on the covers were the big mass monsters, and it was selling more protein drinks and everything else, you know. And we weren't placing, I feel, justly. And I was like, I'm not a big guy, so I'm not going to chase that. And a lot of my peers did, and it ended up really ruining their health. And you know, I didn't feel good as an athlete. It just was not going to be for the long game, because I'm always looking for the long game in a lot of things I do. And I felt like I would be so broken down right now. My body, you know, would be so broken down. And for me, to win on a stage is very temporary, because life is the biggest stage, you know, and that's where you really want to win, because people forget, you know. So I achieved it, and I achieved it in the way I wanted to, which is the hardest I've ever worked. So I could be very proud of that. And when I won, I had a couple guys call me in really high up in the industry, straight out tell me, I said, you know, this division they came up with, you're ideal for it, but they really want to give it to some younger guys. They want to bring this division to everybody. And they're like, you really gonna have to work hard to win it next year. And I really don't think, even if you came at your best, that they would probably give it to you, just for politics to a certain degree. And this was me driving back from winning the Olympia, back to LA from Vegas at night. And I was like, going, wow, this guy is not holding back, you know, but he's known for telling the truth, but he's accomplished a lot. So, and I was like, okay. And that kind of set my brain going, am I going to push that hard and have to deal with that? You know, they gave it to me because I've been around for so long. This title, they don't want someone to get into controversy. I've already had decades of being in this industry for being known as well-liked and well-respected, helping people crossing just not the fitness industry, but crossing over to the entertainment, to the professional athletes. So I try to help expand the fitness industry as an ambassador, you know. So they literally came up to me when they came out with this division, say, hey, we want the industry to go back a little bit and represent what bodybuilding was. The artistic part of it was being lost, you know, because that really started showing with the social media, and the younger guys didn't want to be these mass monsters. They wanted to look very athletic. The shoulders, the waist ratio, the movement, and the posing was getting very popular. And that's why they came with this division.
What year did that division come out?
What's that?
What year did they come out with that?
2016.
Oh, 16, okay.
That was the year I won.
Right.
And the Olympia promoter actually came up to me at the time and said, hey, you should probably think about coming back and competing, because this division, to be honest, you're one of the people we had in mind as far as they're still actually around doing it and looking good. So you might want to put your hat, you know, throw your hat in and give it a go. If you work hard, because I'm not known for being like very OCD with what I do. These guys will carry their Tupperware and eat every so often. I'm a lot more relaxed about it, because I know what I need to do, and so I wasn't known for being very like bodybuilder, you know, ish, but I really wasn't just stuck in that genre either. So in a way, they're like, you need to live a bodybuilder and get this one. And that was the promoter of the Olympia told me that, because he knows me and he knows what I'm capable of. And when he told me that, I was like, wow, that's kind of an honor that he would actually say that to me. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. So I had my wife cook me all my meals, ate it in time, and did everything, did my cardio when I was supposed to, train when I was supposed to, you know, and it paid off. And the next year, it was different because I got so many offers to travel all over the world because I won. And I had to think to myself, if I do that, I'll make money and I'll be a great ambassador, but there's no way that can fit into my training if I want to really step it up a level from the year before. And I had to make that decision, you know. And I think once I made that decision, I'm just going to come in looking the best I can, not compromise my health, and try to get as much done as I can traveling and stuff. And that's what I did. And I was a little bit behind, and I knew it. I even started training with Mickey Rourke, a friend of mine. And I haven't seen him in a few years. And when I saw him, ran into him, and he heard I had won, and they put my picture up at Gold's Venice, and I brought him my gold medal when we trained, you know, Olympic gold medal. He was just so proud of me. And so he wanted to train. He goes, let me train with you for the next one. And I'm thinking in my head, that probably wouldn't be the best idea for me. You know, I'm thinking I should be training with another bodybuilder that trains harder than me. And I'm like, you know what, this would be a cool bonding experience. Because I already in the back of my head, maybe I was looking for excuses and stuff. But to me now, it was about the relationships. And, you know, I have a really cool picture of Mickey at one of my photo shoots after I trained for Muscle and Fitness, standing behind me. And I'm hitting a pose. Did you see that one?
No.
Yeah, it's really cool. They'll probably put that up in Gold's Venice. And he's kind of critiquing how I should have my hands and stuff. And we're both looking in the mirror, and the photographers took a really awesome photo of us doing that. And so, yeah, and that's where I was, you know. But there's still something in me saying that, you know, I could maybe give it one more go.
Really?
Like really get focused and do it.
Knowing what price you'll have to pay for that.
Yeah, because I tell people, it's like, be careful, compete to learn until you get to a certain level where you think you can actually win. That's the problem. These guys they're not balanced enough, where they're going to need 2 more years to put on more leg development for their upper body or whatever it is. But they'll compete, which is good because they'll learn. But they're going after it and doing a lot of unhealthy things to try to win, where even if they won, that wouldn't be their best physique. You know what I mean? And what's the point of that? Because you're like a car. I always tell people I'm a classic car with very low miles. Because every show you do and you go balls to the wall, you're kind of wearing your body out. It ages you. I think I aged a lot, to be honest with you. That Olympia I won, I really felt that one. Just in my joints, and it took a lot out of me, you know? It's like a fighter that just is a brawler, you know? You have to learn how to fight with, you know, more skill and not get hit as like Mayweather. I mean, look how long he lasts, and he's still cognitive, and, you know, everything is okay, where you get these guys that just don't even put their hands up, and they're just going knockout, and they're getting hit all the time. Might be great for the crowd, but not the best for you. And so you need to look at bodybuilding in the same way. You know, some of these freaks, yeah, you might be the crowd favorite, but like what I said, that 15 minutes of fame is only 2 minutes these days. And you're going to compromise the rest of your life, and you're supposed to be in the fitness industry? I mean, there's some professional athletes that don't even look like they've been professional athletes at elite levels because they just look worse than the normal person because of what they put their bodies through, you know? So
what is it then that is hooking you back potentially then, knowing
it's the drive of being competitive, and even at not my extreme of what I know I can do to go extreme to achieve a certain look, I don't necessarily need to do that for people to appreciate my physique, you know, and also my age, to say, wow, that's pretty cool. That's when people ask, like, a lot of these athletes that are doing well and stuff, so what do you think of this athlete? What do you think of this person winning Olympia? I said, you know, they're like, are you impressive? I said, yeah, it's pretty impressive, but let me know where they are at 50s, in their 50s, you know? I won it at 47. Let me know where they are at 47. Then I'll tell you if I'm impressed or not.
That's an interesting point you make, because I think maybe it's only on reflection when you get older you see this, but there's in all aspects of life, and particularly in sport, you'll see these people who come out of nowhere and do really well. But I think, and you're known for this. I was reading it, but you're known as I'm not sure what you would describe, but the king of consistency. And
Yeah.
I think in life generally, people can get up there, but it's like getting up and staying, and then having that consistency year after year is a very different skill than just getting up there.
Yeah.
What's your experience on that?
I think consistency wins in business and so many things. You know, you could be talented, but if you're not consistent, even let's say as an investor, if I invest in something, I'm investing in the long term to a certain degree, because it might, get you excited. Someone that can do something or a fad product that you can invest in and get a quick return on, but it's the long-term return that's really going to make you the money, and it's going to make you that stable money, and you keep collecting that in your portfolio, and pretty soon you're just sitting back and you don't have to worry about anything crashing because it's been consistent.
Yeah, I have a friend who's an investor, and he says the same thing. He says a lot of time if you just stay in the game, the fact that you're just there when most people have dropped away means that you're so much ahead of everyone else just by turning up every day. Just that in itself is more than a lot of people generally do. And I guess in your game, like being, in your sort of almost mid-50s, there can't be many people in your space that have been doing it that long and are still doing what you're doing today.
Yeah.
I would have thought. Very few.
Right, and it's you're starting to see more of them. They had the Masters Olympia that just got introduced this year. It's at the end of this month. It's in Romania. They
What
actually
age
talked to
group's
me. What's that?
What age group is that?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is I won the Olympia at 47, right? Their Masters Olympia starts at 40, and when they asked me, I'm like, guys, I won it at 47. How are you asking me to do that? It's like, for me, if I'm going to get ready and bust my ass, because you have to qualify to do the Olympia. It's like getting to the Super Bowl. You have to qualify to get there, right? Like the Oscars, you have to be nominated. Just being nominated with the other field of actors is pretty prestigious. But to win is a whole nother level. And so just to get to the Olympia as an athlete is very prestigious. They'll put it on their title, Olympian. And 7-time Olympian. They try to make it look like you won it 7 times, but no, you made it to Olympia 7 times, right? But that's still an achievement. Mm-hmm. And some guys never, as a pro, they've never got to go to Olympia, And so, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
So the senior.
Right, the Masters.
Masters, yeah.
Senior.
Senior. Sorry. Well, yeah.
Right. So the senior citizens of that sport, the Masters.
The Masters.
So yeah, that starts at 40, and to me it was like, if I'm gonna get ready for a show and really sacrifice, I might as well just do the regular Olympia, because once you win the Olympia, you're qualified for life. That's what my point is as far as like guys just getting to the Olympia. You actually have to qualify to get there, to win certain pro shows, to get there. I don't ever have to compete other than just going into the Olympia, which is a big honor. But I'd never want to do that unless I think I could be competitive, because it'd almost be like, why is this guy even on stage? It's sad. It's like these fighters that should have retired and they keep going, And so, yeah, when they asked me to do the Masters, I was like, unless you raise it to 50, to me, I'm not interested. Because 40s, there's still a lot of great athletes in their late 30s right now in the regular Olympia. So, and you need to bring the prize money up much more too, to travel that far and to commit that much time to it.
What kind of prize money do you get for winning the Olympia? Is it?
I'm not quite sure what it is. It's always changing, and I think they're even going to change it now. I think the total is $350,000. I'm not sure. They're always trying to change it. They're always trying to promote it. But the thing is that compared to other professional sports, I mean, it's pretty bad. It's $1 billion industry, and we're the front runners to this industry. It's kind of crazy. I think if they gave the athletes more money, I think it can give a lot of the athletes a little bit more money. I would think they would spend it on their health more, more on their health care, because that's a big cost, especially if you're an entrepreneur, is your health care, and for you and your family. And I think a lot of these athletes are just kind of living paycheck to paycheck, training people and this and that, have some sponsors. But I think if it was to be more prize money, I think they would be able to do a lot more things safer. That would be my hope,
It's changed. Do you think it's changed a lot recently? Because the Olympia kind of almost, I wouldn't say it died, but it kind of had a strange period, which now they seem to be doing a great job at riding the trend and reinventing themselves a little bit. But it kind of went away a little bit.
What's that?
The Olympia, in terms of its sort of relevance
Right.
relevance to the young audience. I think probably just after I don't know the exact year, but probably after that sort of, people got so big, and then it sort of went through a strange time where I don't even know who won the Olympia.
Like myself, it turned me off. I actually didn't even really pay attention for the longest time. But then you have the guys that dominate. I mean, the last few Olympias, they've been dominating for a long time. I did a seminar with Ronnie Coleman to my left and Phil Heath, on the other side. Ronnie
LA
Coleman,
Expo, was that?
That was the LA Fit Expo.
Yeah, I saw that one, yeah.
And so that was, pretty cool to be up there, that caliber with those guys. And, Ronnie's won it 8 times and Phil won it 7 times. And so a lot of these guys that should have probably won it were never able to beat them, And sometimes when you have a reigning champ that long, people lose interest in a lot of sports too. Unless the guy is such a villain that people want to see him, get his butt kicked. But both of those weren't so much. Maybe Phil a little bit more, but Ronnie's always very likable. But and that's the thing, is they were both huge. Ronnie more so. There's nobody that can touch Ronnie in size and conditioning. He was like another human. And, and to a certain degree, he's compromised his health, with the surgeries and stuff, because he was so strong. Just all that weight and everything on his bones and his spine and his knees and his hips just kind of left him kind of crippled to a certain degree,
What's your view on training? Like, particularly now you're older, did you train very heavy and create any issues, or were you fairly balanced? And how has that changed to what type of training you do now?
Yeah, I definitely train different now. To be honest, I think I'm a little lazier now. I don't know if it's because my age or the back of my head, I'm thinking I don't want to get injured. So I'm not pushing myself as hard. And I think being young, that in the back of your head is not so much there, that little voice. But luckily for me, that voice was still somewhat there when I was younger, because I was pretty strong. I don't know if it's just, I know a lot has to do with your attachments too, of the placements, and just the sports I played, like, wrestling and stuff. But my squat was pretty heavy. And one thing I do miss is learning how to focus before you get under that heavy squat. And it was almost like, I train a lot of professional baseball players, and you have this almost like you have to do things a certain amount of time. It's almost like a tick. Yes. Like, and if you feel like you don't do it correctly, you have to back off, play set, and you have to get under the bar and do all that again, and you do it again. I miss that, because you had to be such in that zone to get that heavy weight up. You'd pick it up, you'd feel it, and there's that little voice in your head saying, this doesn't feel like it did, like when you maxed out the other day. And so you just what was smart with me is I would always test it. I would go half reps. Instead of just going all the way down, I'd go half reps. I'm like, okay, not bad. And then go a little bit lower. So I'd give up a couple reps, so I can feel how my body's performing. And it saved me a lot of times, because I would go down a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay. Now, if I would have went all the way down and I felt that twinge in my lower back or my knee, that might have really been disastrous. So I've always kind of had that little voice to kind of let me know, hey, you can fight another day. It's more important to do it right today. But when I did feel good and have your little, what do they call those? It's almost
well,
like
there's a number of things. Depends how you describe it, but yeah, it can either be a routine or it can be a tick. It's I'm always wondering, is that me just being a bit weird, or is that just a routine to get you in the right state? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably blends in.
Yeah, it was like superstition, I guess you can say too, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of that.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I used to do that because I used to lift so heavy in my squats, and I totally forgot about even in my I was pretty good at dumbbell presses
and bench press.
No, not bench. I stay away from bench.
You?
Yeah, all the disasters over 40 years of training, everyone that's torn their pec has always been on a straight bar. I would have to say 90% on a straight bar. The dumbbells is totally different.
I was trying, I don't know if you tried there was this flexible bar. A guy's in there, took me through it. It's, I can't think what the name of it is. Tsunami bar, that's it, yeah. It's pretty cool. So it's like an Olympic bar, and it flexes.
And it flexes, yeah.
But it means, the guy's pretty smart guy. Yeah, but also it allows you to do the exercise, whether it's squats, deadlifts, pressing. It allows you to do a lot lighter. But because you're actually moving, you're controlling the weight up, down, and sideways.
Right.
It's got a really weird feel, and you can actually sort of really explode it, but you're not putting as much weight through your joint, which is how the reason they said they developed it was to allow people not to have to do as much when you're squatting, etc. And it's a really nice feeling, but it takes all of the, it kind of just takes a lot of the pressure off your joints, which, as you get older, is also a thing to think about.
Right. It's different. You really can't compare the two of just a regular weight that goes up and down. That's like having to really work on your stabilizing muscles is really key to injury prevention and overall form. So when you go back to something that doesn't move, your form is much better.
That's what he said, yeah. When you go back to a regular bar, your strength improves quite significantly.
Yeah, because a lot of times if you're deconditioned, you use a heavier weight, the first thing you feel is you kind of shake because your muscles are the stabilizing muscles are trying to stabilize it. But the main muscle that's actually doing it are okay. It's the stabilizing muscles that your brain, it's the signals that it's sending out too. Instead of just from here to here, and you try to get that signal. I forgot what that was called, but it's in your nervous system,
right.
And that actually has it firing all over the place. So if you can control the firing all over the place and keep it still, when you get under something that you don't have to worry about, then all that firing could be directed into just that strength, that explosion of your nervous system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then I've spoke to a few people on the podcast about this mind-muscle connection and how it is, proved it is actually a thing. And I guess the more connected you can be to what's happening in that exercise, the better it is as well. And I suppose sometimes, well, when you're doing that, you've got to be connected because there's so many things going on.
Right, and like sprinting, when I ran track and work with a lot of sprinters or even fighters, you have to think of the motion you're doing. That will actually help your time because you think of lifting and just crossing the leg and just high step straight. Make sure it doesn't do this. And you just focus on this, like this going down and this going up, just like that. When I'm thinking of squatting, I'm thinking just driving straight up, no other movement, just driving it straight up in my brain. So there's no other distractions, And that's why having your feet positioned correct and all that really makes a difference, because if your mind goes a little bit like, my feet aren't quite the way I like it, it's a little bit off, that interferes with that connection. It makes a big difference.
Yeah,
I mean, there's bars that I've thought about before, and that probably does it with just because it's flexible, right? Because there's bars I thought about of actually moving inside that's battery operated, and so, or even vibrates, so it kind of does the same thing. And then, people have been doing exercise on the Bosa balls to balance if they're squatting. That helps too, especially with injuries, things like that. So it's a similar principle.
How have you dealt with your condition? Have you had any injuries that niggle you now, or you sort
of? My knee and my neck. right in this area, and that's been injuries from years ago that now catches up. When you get injured when you're young and you think it goes away, it never really goes away, because the less muscle mass you have and the less activity is when you're young, it gets exposed and it's still there. So you might have been so active and so strong in other areas that you didn't even know existed anymore, right? Because you've compensated so much. As that kind of diminishes, that gets to be a little bit louder in your body. And you know, I totally feel it here. Luckily, my left side's my dominant side, so it hasn't affected the gains on the side. It's affected the strength a little bit, because I know there's a little bit less firing. I have to really be aware of my posture and how I sleep. Will help it a lot.
Which way do you sleep, front or back?
I sleep on my front.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I usually use a pillow here on my chest to bring this higher, so I could drop my head a little bit, so it's not like this or like this.
Yeah, that's what I'm like.
So it's a little bit more. Even if I'm turned, it's not so pushed up. And then I'll have another pillow here, and I'll try to usually like put the side of my face, so I have this space here, so I can breathe, so I'm not smothered.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there's pillows and something out there that.
How do you put your legs? Because I
move them all over.
Oh, okay.
I can't keep anything still for very long. I kind of like to move it around. It seems to help, because there's something where you keep it in one spot too long, it might be comfortable, but it actually could cause some soreness.
Yeah, that's they say because I lay on my front, which is the worst way apparently to sleep, and I hold my legs up. That creates issues with my back when I get up as well. So but I can't. You know, after a certain time, it's like, how am I going to change sleeping in a different position? It's quite a big habit to break.
Yeah, right. Because then you
don't sleep properly.
Yeah, and sleep is very important.
Yeah.
You know, so it just kind of comes with the territory. And you try to figure it out, but definitely stretching, range of motion, and you know, strengthening the areas will help. I know if I was to go back and start doing some neck exercises, you know, with some weights and stuff, just watching TV or just staying in a position for a certain amount of time won't affect me as much, because I'll already be strong. Does that make sense? Yeah,
there's a product we tried in there as well. And you put it on your head.
Oh, yeah, and it turns?
And you kind of do.
Right.
I did, and it was really nice. He said it's good they use it for a lot of contact sports because he reckons it reduces concussion, but also neck. You know, nowadays we're like this, and it kind of helps with your neck, blood flow, etc. It's pretty interesting.
Or you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you think about recovery now differently to when you was younger? Like, there's a lot of new information and research out about the importance of sleep and rest and recovery. Is that something you're more conscious of, or have you always been pretty good on that side of things?
My body will kind of tell me if I need to take a nap. You know, and it doesn't have to be a long one. And sometimes I just can't sleep at night. Everyone's circadian rhythm is different. You know, I mean, certain lights and stuff will kind of help influence it. But for me, I'm more of a night person. You know, and it could be some hormonal things too going on as you age. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think a lot of these younger guys are not recovering as they should, because I don't think they're getting the sleep, because of their hormones. They're all over the place, you know. And so if you don't sleep and your hormones are all over the place, that affects you emotionally too, you know. And emotionally, if you're stressed, then that's going to cause a lot of cortisone, a lot of breaking down of, you know, just tissue and everything else. So it's all connected, you know, and just your mental outlook on stuff, because you gotta be really positive, and you know, in situations that you probably normally most people wouldn't be positive, but you're gonna go through it regardless. You know, it's always kind of been my motto. Is in a way it's very easy for me. I've always thought of like, what's the worst possible situation I could be in from going through this? And I said, okay, I can handle that. So other than that, okay, what else is there? So stop being consumed by that, because that just brings negative energy, which I've always felt creates more negative energy, you know? And just having that positive energy helps you just physically too. And that's the thing, because you start, because as humans, we communicate not just with language, but with body language. And your energy dictates your body language subconsciously. You don't know, you know? That's why getting in really good shape can help mitigate a lot of that mental stuff, because it'll counter the negative body language you're putting out with positive body language for being in shape. Does that make sense? So it's a big part. It's all connected as far as recovery. And I think a lot of the recovery is more mental than it is physical. Especially if you're having, you know, correct sleep and nutrition. I mean, and you're anabolic. I mean, it takes a lot. The human body is very resilient. So I think it's a lot mental. I really think you know, you could really do a lot more. A lot of people can do a lot more, and they make excuses for it. As a human athlete dealing with elite athletes, I just feel that people really underestimate what they can do, you know, and it's mental. You see like the best of the best that are talented, but they do so well because their work ethics, because they just keep pushing it. Like literally they'll go hours. Like a friend of mine, Apollo Ono, 3-time Olympian. He's made it to the Olympics 3 times. Just to make it once is amazing. And he's medaled in all of them. I mean, he's like the Michael Phelps of the Winter Olympics because he was a speed skater. And he said after everyone was done training, he would go back and train some more. You know, Kobe Bryant, I think, said the same thing. A lot of these guys, people don't really realize how much Mayweather, like, trains. They think, oh, he talks a lot, blah, 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 but he probably trains more than anybody. Pacquiao, same way. I mean, they will work and work and work. So, you know, I think physically you can. It's just the mental part of it. And it's who you're around. It's same thing with work ethics. If you're around a bunch of lazy people, you're going to get complacent. You're going to be lazy. But if, like, your people you roll with, they're just on the go, like, 100% all the time, you might not be that way, but guess what? You're going to be closer to that than what you normally would be, you know, because that's just what you see. And that's why, like, parenting is very important, or mentoring someone, you know, is very important to show them this is what it takes, you know. And it's just, it really, talent gets you so far, but hard work and consistency wins the game all the time. My motto has always been, if I can't beat you, I'm going to outlast you. And it's worked out, you know, so far. And I'm still thinking that in my head. I'm like, I'm going to beat C-Bum. I'm going to wait it out until he starts like looking a certain way. So I'm going to jump back in there. And, you know, I did it with my boy Flex Wheeler, but I didn't really beat Flex. I mean, not at his prime Flex. Nobody can touch that guy, you know, but I had the privilege of standing next to him on the Olympia stage and beating him. Not the way I would want to, but hey, it was an honor to be there with him, you know. But yeah, so training.
What's your view on drugs? Like there was a piece I read where Arnold mentioned about banning drugs in bodybuilding.
Right. See, I wish they would call it medication.
Medication.
When you say drugs, you know, it almost justifies them classifying it like they did back in the late 80s, early 90s, which is a travesty, because then what you do is you take away from the medical profession, and now it's in the black market. And you got all these athletes that everyone likes to watch, even the politicians that are passing these laws. It's like, they're not getting high off of it, just, you know what I'm saying? It's like, people aren't losing their homes, they're not committing crimes. It's just the strangest thing to classify it like it is with the other narcotics, you know? And so I really, because it is a medication, that's clinically what a lot of the stuff is used for, except for the veterinarian stuff. But I'm sure if they did testing for that, there could be an application for it for humans too. But yeah, I like to call it medication.
Coming up next.
I want to get into law enforcement because I feel there needs to be a change. Anything you do, there's going to be politics in it. What I see right now in social media is fitness and politics. With my younger brother that would hold my jacket, I would literally go to Venice Beach and I would battle whole crews by myself. I like the true art of bodybuilding. I actually would do seminars about the origins of where the poses come from.
Why did you think that not banning it wouldn't make a competition fair, if I understood it? I think it was a quote from Arnold or something where...
Well, I'm talking about legally.
Okay.
Just in the classification of it legally. It fell under the narcotics, you know, so just being in possession or trying to buy it, it was like if you're trying to buy cocaine. It's like absurd, you know? And I mean, you could die taking a bottle of aspirin before you could die taking a bottle of Dianabol or any other, you know, steroid. It's just stupid because a person wants to look a certain way. It's like, I don't see them banning plastic surgeries that puts all that junk in your lips, or Botox, which is actual poison, you know, but it's okay. It's just the strangest thing to me. I just think it really kind of started when, at least in the States, when a lot of these records were being broken by the young guys, and the old school idols were getting their records shattered. And a lot of these guys that are in politics passing laws goes, oh, we can't allow that. No one can hit more than Babe Ruth. You know, I grew up, you know, with these guys, and that's not fair. Let's pass a law to outlaw it, because these young guys are going to get hurt. It's like, but people are still going in the bars and drinking their asses off until they get, you know, alcohol poisoning or cigarettes. It's like, are you kidding me with that? It's the craziest thing in the world. So for me, if it's used right, it's medication.
What do you think about it in its place in competitive bodybuilding then?
Well, like the analogy of a race car, I can put a lot of nitrous and everything else, that just a lot of chemicals and things that you're going to get to use that race car one time, and it's going to burn everything out, your gears, your engine, and everything. You might win the race. It's going to be expensive though. You know what I mean? So I kind of look at the same analogy. It's like, yeah, if you want to blow your kidneys or your liver out and, you know, maybe have a heart attack, high blood pressure, you know, diabetes, whatever the case might be, that's what you want to do. I guess that's your right. So, but there's a better way to do it, because anything in bodybuilding, it's a cumulative amount of time of doing certain things to bring that balance, proportion, and size up. Because you take so many drugs, there's a certain limit where your receptors aren't going to work anymore, and the return on your investment is not there. See what I'm saying? So to me, it's always about the return on your investment. Okay, let's say you decide to do something. Let's say you've reached your pinnacle of what you can do without it, and there's a certain look you have. Well, then you want to get blood work, see where you're at, and if you want to do something, make sure you assess every single thing that you do, so you know what your body responds to. Because there's no sense taking 5 or 6 different things and one thing works and you're being very toxic and burning out your receptors and everything else with the other 5 things. It makes no sense to me, and that's usually the case. I look at some people's protocols, I'm like, I literally can like give you 90% of this stuff that's fake, so you think it's real, placebo, that you're thinking you're taking as much as everyone else, and you will not notice a difference in your performance and your gains. And it's the truth.
How do you advise young people? Because there was Dorian mentioned that a lot of these young kids just don't have any feeling or connection about or concern about what will happen. You know, it's very much, this is now, take what I need to do.
Youth.
But do you obviously coach a lot of young athletes. So
right.
How do you coach around it? Because at that stage in life, it's like, okay, I don't care. I'll do whatever I've got to do, no matter what the consequences. How do you coach them to take more of a sensible approach?
You definitely get your blood work so you can see exactly what your body can handle, and if you're at the red, where it's actually going to maybe kill you or lose a kidney or something like that. Other than that, some people just have to find out for themselves. They really do.
The hard way.
It's almost, hey, this 1 year, take whatever you want, as much as you want, and talk to me after this year. Just make sure you have your blood work so you're not really close to really permanently damaging everything. And I will tell you, 10 out of 10 times, they'll come back to me and say, okay, what should I do? And I said, okay, are you ready now? Because obviously that doesn't work. You know that, right? And it's amazing because I've seen it throughout my whole career of just guys, just you could see when they're just on so much gear and they're not really progressing, because when it comes down to showtime, all that bulk and size and just unhealthy, uneasy looking, they have to tighten up and really show the quality. It's barely any noticeable if they didn't do any of that at all, as far as the gains they made, you know? And if you want to just be like a impressive gym body and push a lot of weight, but when it comes to like on the stage of exposing yourself, like at the leanest, most proportionate, wherever you can see the gains, you'll see on that stage, because it's stripping away all that bullshit, you know? And that's the beauty of it. And I always see guys coming from back east when I was younger competing at the national level. And I was already doing magazine covers and stuff. And they would be on the other side of the gym and they would mouth, "Is that Danny Hester? Wow, he's so small." I literally could see them saying that because they're like, you know, probably 40 pounds bigger than me. But then a few months goes by, we're doing the national level on stage. They're not even making the top 10. It's all about the quality, you know? It's like, wow, those big arms you had when you were bulked up off season, what happened to them? You know? It's like, that wasn't real tissue. So all it is if it's not real tissue, I don't want it, because it's just going to come with a lot of adverse effects, you know? It's like going into battle, and instead of having all a backpack full of weapons that you can actually use, it's full of rocks. So you go in there, it's not usable. It doesn't really, you know, translate into anything that's usable. That was just a lot of weight you're carrying around. So it could look good in a hood. I'll just buy 3 more hoodies and look like I put on a lot of size and save myself money and health risks, you know? So
some of the drugs are more dangerous than others. We did a podcast with Jerry Brainham, who was talking about
he's
Tren
the best.
And how
Jerry's
it seems to be
awesome.
very popular, this Trenbolone. Like, why
it's
do you...
become a meme now.
Yeah, what's with that? Like he said, it's just like out of everything you can take, that's just totally the worst thing you can take. But it seems to be a popular thing now. Like you're probably connected with a lot of that world. Why
sure.
is there an interest? Is it because it's got a reputation of just making you, you know, growing your muscles, or what is it with that one?
Like anything else, in moderation. But you have to look at if you can get the same effects with something else that's less. Because my concern more is for the mental part of it, you know. And I know Tren has been linked to a lot of Alzheimer's, and that's the scariest thing in the world. That's probably, I would rather, not to say I would want it, but I would rather probably have cancer than Alzheimer, you know. Because at least cancer, you die with your memories and knowing your loved ones. With Alzheimer's, it's just like, wow, you're not even you. Where's your soul? You know? And I was an RN at a mental hospital. So I've seen a lot of families that couldn't afford to take care of them. The state would take them. And I would have to care for these people. And it was just like, they're just existing. Are they even human? You know? And as a nurse at the time, it was really hard being young and seeing these burnt out nurses that have been there treat them subhuman. It's pretty sad. You know, that's kind of one of the reasons I got out of that industry, because it was very heavy. But it taught me a lot of empathy for people, and, you know, you don't know where they're at the time in their life or what's going on. It's like, you got to give people a little bit of space, you know, and not really be so quick to how they should be doing, because this is how I would do it. Because you might not have ever been in that position they're in, you know. But yeah, the Alzheimer thing, when they came out with that study, that's like the worst, man. You know, you can always get a kidney transplant or whatever, but you don't want to mess with that. Yeah. That's like, I think that should actually be right out there when anyone talks about Tren. And I guarantee you, at least I would hope so, that would be a big deterrent for people wanting to use Tren, just to get the little bit of gains, because it does amplify anything you use. That's supposedly the benefit of it, and people don't realize that. If you are going to take Tren, it will amplify the testosterone you take by tenfold. So you don't need to already take a bunch of testosterone. You can actually take less, but don't take tren and take a bunch of testosterone. It's like, bro, it's like defeats the whole purpose. Don't take that and just take more testosterone then. You know what I mean? It's like, just, that's what I'm talking about, ruling things out and see what works for you.
I guess most people don't know this. You know, they probably, a lot of it's probably bro science in the gyms, and it's like, oh yeah, this
you know what's amazing? These young people, I'll be in a car or somewhere in the gym or wherever with them, and if we don't know something, in 5 seconds, one of them will pull it up on Google. It's the craziest thing these days. And I'm thinking in my head, so why aren't they doing this? If they're going to do something with their bodies, they should be the best athletes that ever existed right now. You can get all this information for free right now, you know?
Well, when you started, I guess, you know, like, where did you find out about how to train? Like, probably some magazines and maybe the big guy in the gym. That's about it.
Yeah, it was the magazines for sure. That was a big deal. And that was, for me, that was why I was like, wow, when I actually finally got in the magazines, it was the coolest thing. Like, to go into a supermarket and see yourself in a magazine or even on the cover, you know, there's just nothing cooler than that. And having your family members call from all over saying, hey, I was in the supermarket and I just walked by your picture in the magazine. You know, and it's sad that hard copies don't really exist as much anymore. Muscle and Fitness is no longer. It's you know, only on the internet. It's an online magazine, but okay, you get a cover for an online magazine. I can make my own cover and put it on there. It's different, you know.
What was the first magazine that happened to you then?
Muscle Mag, I think. That was Robert Kennedy. That was he was Canadian. He was a Canadian. But I think Muscle Mag was good because it wasn't so hardcore, like a Muscular Development or Flex magazine. But it was a little more hardcore than Muscle and Fitness. So I really liked that magazine. And I remember getting to walk on Venice boardwalk with Robert one time before he passed away. It was really cool. I'm just really blessed to be part of that whole culture at the highest level. You know, I used to go in Joe Weider's office because I had a contract with them to do all their home equipment. I think I told you I was on the box covers of all the sporting goods stores and stuff because they wanted more of an athlete. But I was trying to be a bodybuilder. But I would just grow proportionally and I was always balanced, you know, in good shape. But I'll take the job, you know, because it got me the notoriety in the bodybuilding industry. Because I had 6 pages every issue of Flex and Muscle and Fitness, you know, for years. And so that's where we learned. And a lot of it was just placebo because the science really wasn't that good in supplements either back then. I mean, we had to mix ice cream and peanut butter with our shakes because it tasted terrible. And you had to use a blender. You couldn't use a shaker because it'd come out like chalk. So I remember I used to break the eggs, you know, the raw eggs, and put the ice cream in it with the protein powder and the nuts and the berries. And, you know, it was a process that I kind of missed because in a way, you were really focusing on your nutrition part of it. And I would drink it and I would actually like mentally feel like, okay, this is like hitting me after a good workout, you know? Nowadays, it's kind of different. At least I seem to think it's different. It's all pre-made and they're drinking it and who knows what's in it, you know. When I made it, it was all organic stuff, you know. I don't know. It's a little bit, not to complain or, I mean, you know when you're getting old when you start saying that
back
it
in
used
the day.
to be better. You know, but even back in the day, it goes by really quick because even what I think is new was already someone else's back in the day. You know, some kid that's 28, his back in the day was like 2016. Yeah, back in the day when you won the Olympia, I was just getting out of high school competing, you know. And it was so cool how you guys used to do it. And I'm thinking, well, no, because my back in the day is much further back. And that's how we did it. Yeah. But, yeah, supplements, it's just a shame because, like, Bang just got, you know, class action lawsuit and lost. And they went into bankruptcy.
They went to bankruptcy, did they?
Yeah, they just got bought by Monster.
Wow. What was that? What for ingredients?
Creatine.
Creatine.
That's what built their company, is creatine. Super creatine. That was put in carbonated.
Okay.
Because it was a carbonated drink, and it created its own genre. Because now it wasn't a energy drink like Monster, Rockstar, or Red Bull. It was an energy drink that was a sports energy drink. So it created its own genre between Gatorade and energy drinks, right in there. It was like a fitness pre-workout drink. They were the first to do it, and they just went to $1 billion in sales, like literally in 5 or 6 years. And one of the main ingredients was they were claiming they have a special patent on the super creatine that was able to be stabilized in this carbonated drink. I got so many companies send me stuff all the time, but when I'm out on the road and stuff, I don't have time to go and get a can and mix it and this and that for creatine. And so it always had it, so that would be my go-to drink. So they got me on that, and they found out they never had creatine in it. That's crazy. How crazy is that? Right.
So they were promoting it had creatine, and they didn't, and that's where they got the loss.
A proprietary blend of creatine on.
Okay. Which was
on
zero.
Top of it. Right. That's how you get away with.
Well, that's actually not that good, I guess. That's
happens all the time in the industry, though.
Yeah.
Not as much because a lot.
I'm surprised they would do that. Like, what a risk! Because I remember seeing them. They just exploded,
Right.
and it was a great story. Why would you want to take? It couldn't have just been purely down to cost, could it?
Well, you really couldn't do it. Is the thing.
Okay.
It wouldn't be stable. Like, let's say you mix. What I found when I would mix certain things in carbonated, it would just fizz over.
Right.
You ever see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if it was like an Alka-Seltzer almost.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to put sometimes if I didn't have real water, I'd put sparkling water, and that was always a mess. So
yeah.
Okay, I understand what you mean.
And the super creatine was supposed to be like the best to absorb and all that stuff too. Of course, it could be cost. It could dramatically, which is a big thing, is the taste profile. So if you actually had what's supposed to have in there, it would make it taste like shit, and maybe not a lot of people would taste it, drink it, because that's more than half of why people drink it.
Wow.
So that could change a lot of things.
When did that happen then? Was that recently?
6 months.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because it was harder for me to find the drink. They had a new brand that had the amino acids in it, the BCAAs, like Rain and a lot of these other companies, but it started not having the creatine. I'm like, what's going on here? And you find out. So Monster just bought them.
So did they buy them as a distressed business then, I guess?
They bought them out of bankruptcy.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were also in a lawsuit with them. And they were going to lose the lawsuit. Bang was going to lose to Monster. Was for some trademark stuff. So they just lost all the way around. So now, they built a great brand. A lot of people don't know, like you didn't know. So you see, if you look in a lot of the stores now, you might find some with the creatine, but you're going to see it. It's not. You won't find it anymore.
I always remember seeing the guy with the big gold thing on.
Yeah, Jack Owack. Yeah, I know Jack.
You know.
He's the owner. I knew Jack before he came out with Bang. I almost did business with him.
And he's like gone now. Well, not gone, but.
Oh, he still made money. Believe me. He still made a lot of money, man. I think it might have just gotten to him, Because I like Jack. He works hard. He's had a lot of products. He had Redline as one of his companies.
Okay, that was it, yeah.
At one time, they were claiming that had...
I heard the story about...
Had clenbuterol on it.
How he had it, I heard, I don't know whether it's just rumors, but I heard the story about how his previous company kind of came about, and there was like a separation, someone told me. So, yeah, he's been around for a while, I guess.
Oh, he's been around a long time, yeah. But that's the thing is, it's pretty common in this industry. It used to be like the Wild West back in the day, because he would come out with, and I don't know the exact laws now, but they have changed, making it a lot harder. Like, to take the risk, you're gonna have to pay for it more now, even prison time, when back then it really wasn't about prison time, it was about fines. So I'll make 30 million, I get fined 3 million, I will do that all day long. That's what people say, you know what I mean? And that's what was happening. So, because it's FDA, it's not the pharmaceuticals, which is a much higher bar to be able to, pass things through. And usually your competitors, if you're doing well, they're going to scrutinize and look at your product. So it almost polices itself to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So
what's next for Danny then? Like, what are you working on now then?
Well, I'm starting to do stuff online. I've already kind of accomplished a lot of things in the fitness. I mean, if I'm doing seminars next to Ronnie Coleman and Phil Heath and a lot of these great guys, I like to think that's somewhat of the accomplishment to hold me in that same prestige. I want to do something with that for sure. More coaching. I just don't have a really good platform for it, and I don't want to get boggled down with just everybody's like day-to-day plan. So I almost want to be a coach to the coaches. So let the coaches have their people do all the regular stuff, but when it comes time to competition, hire me to coach your coach and oversee things, which would take a lot of like daily things that I don't have time to tell you to eat 4 chicken breasts and that. You know what I mean? It's like I'd be more useful in that capacity, and I think I would teach a lot of coaches, if that's the career they want to be in, to not hurt their clients and even learn themselves, and then with the posing, but you could do all that online. I like still to do seminars too, but I just applied for the Las Vegas Police Department.
Really?
Yeah.
I
went through everything already. I'm just waiting for a couple things to go through. My birth certificate, I don't have my original. They need that for some reason, even though I have a passport, and it's crazy. So I'm waiting for that. I've already
What was the interest in getting in?
Well, I was in law enforcement before, and I was also a nurse. I guess I could say I want to get the experience, especially now being in this area. My wife likes it, so it looks like we're going to be here for a while. I want to get into law enforcement because I feel there needs to be a change. And I want to get inside and see how things work. And when I was in law enforcement before, I was very young. So for me to feel like I was going to change anything was not going to happen. And I felt like I had to compromise a lot with just some of the things as far as integrity-wise that I just couldn't live with, to see some things. And I wasn't experienced enough to tell a guy that's been there a long time that's much older than me how things should be done, or I don't agree with it. And that's the problem with the culture a lot of times, And so me getting in there and learning how things are done, and having my experience with the homeless, because that's a big deal right now with law enforcement. The academy is only 6 months, and they don't have a lot of, social training to deal with social issues like the mentally ill. I mean, that's what I was trained on. I could diagnose them just looking at how they're acting. Schizophrenic, bipolar, all that stuff. I used to give them medication for and everything. So I think I'd be a huge asset in trying to maybe help with how maybe things should go. Just like I say, brushstrokes add to a whole picture. I think I could be a very big brushstroke in that. And then I would do that for a while, knowing just the culture of that and seeing how, things go in mentally ill and how they're dealt with. So I could see, and my 10-year goal is to run for politics.
Run?
For politics.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of, what would be the sort of position that you...
Probably dictatorship.
Dictatorship?
Yeah.
Yeah?
If I couldn't get that, but no, he's like, what?
I had to think twice.
He's like, which party is that? That would be
I know
party.
what that is, but yeah. So what kind of big are you? Were you a U.S. national then? Are you?
My father worked for the CIA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were born in different places.
Right.
Because he traveled a lot. I was born in Thailand.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so.
Right.
Yeah.
So I could never be president.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to change that law. Right. I get in. Arnie couldn't get in.
No.
He made it to governor. He could have easily been president.
So was it governor of
California?
Nevada? Oh, California. Not Nevada.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I would go straight to the Senate. I think I would go straight to the Senate. That's where things get changed, It used to be, with a lot of things, when you hit a certain level, I just did the seminar with Ronnie Coleman and Phil Heath. It's like when you accomplish a certain level, like an elite level, and you've worked with other people, you start seeing it's not impossible. You know, sometimes you put all these barriers, thinking I don't have enough experience in it, and blah blah blah. But I mean, especially when you look at politics now, the bar is not high. You know what I mean? I mean, you thought you had to be like no trouble, no issues at all, have such an education, maybe go to Ivy League school, all these like extreme, like elite things that you had to strive for to possibly be in the politics. That's all gone out. Like it's whoever can get
But
in.
you actually need to have spent quite a bit of time in prison. You need to be like a terrible character.
Yeah, because people think you're real, right?
Yeah.
It's like if there's no controversy or, whatever. But no, but jokes aside, I think that's you have to have done something to be able to say something. That's just how I feel.
Absolutely,
You know?
yeah.
And so I want to be well-rounded, and I think getting in law enforcement will give me kind of a better understanding of what really goes on, like what really goes on. Because it's hard to see from the outside. You can sit there and be a politician. I want to help the homeless. I want to, fight crime. Well, do you know shit about any of these things? I guarantee you don't.
Most people don't, if we're honest. Most people
Well,
don't.
and if they do, they'll know just from their perspective.
Exactly, yeah.
Like there's a lot of law enforcement guys, like the sheriff here is now the governor. The Los Angeles and Las Vegas police chief is now the governor of Nevada, and that's what he ran on that platform. But there's a lot of aspects of it where I don't really see him, because he came from the culture. He's not going to go against the culture because that's what got him there. Does that make sense? It's like me achieving certain level of Mr. Olympia. Now I'm just talking so much shit about it. Well, basically what I'm doing is I'm diminishing what I've achieved in it, because then I'm just talking about myself to a certain degree, So I'm doing it to get that experience so I can understand it. And especially with the mentally ill also. Because the two biggest things in any culture is crime and mental health. Those are the biggest things. And there's a lot of contributing factors. I worked in the prison system, maximum security prison. I worked in a mental hospital. So you see why and where they're coming from to be in those places. And it's not real complicated either, but everything connects. It's not black and white. So that's why to run, you these days you couldn't run as an independent. You just, there's not enough votes there. You have to choose a party. And I think Nevada is actually a purple state, where California is a total blue state.
Purple,
Texas,
what's that? I'm not...
Well,
it's kind of in between
you
the
take
both.
blue and you
Okay.
take red, you make purple.
Right.
So like Texas and some of these are red states, right? Republican, blue, Democratic states. So Nevada is kind of a purple state. It's very interesting.
And how much of it is about the connections to, because my guess is from afar, it's obviously politics is we kind of want certain people in the club and not, and we want to also make sure that our club stays in the decision-making power. Like how easy is it to kind of work through and to actually get to a decent level? Is that you? And I know you said earlier, just a moment ago, that sometimes we think this is out of our reach. You obviously believe that this is very achievable.
Right. Anything you do, there's going to be politics in it. Any type of genre, occupation, there's politics in it. People say there isn't. They're stupid. They're not going anywhere. You have to realize the politicians, the players in the game, where the money's at, where certain things that certain people do won't back. So you have to really be strategic about it, because you might be able to win, but it's going to be short term and you're not going to get anything done, if that's what you're interested in doing. You know what I mean? So you have to be very diplomatic. And that's where the word politician comes from. And to be a good politician is you have to be a good diplomat. You have to not just be, it's so divisive right now. It's like, do you understand, to be a good politician, no one's got to be satisfied? That's the key. They could live with it, but they won't be entirely satisfied. Then you did a good job. Any negotiation. right? If a party or person walks away thinking, oh yeah, we did really well, well then you probably weren't fair-handed at that, you know? And that's kind of where people have to understand stuff. So to be divisive is very easy these days. You can collect a lot of, you know, a lot of supporters because people like extremes, especially with the social media, because being moderate is not very entertaining.
It doesn't get attention, doesn't get you talked about.
Right. And that's why you have to establish a certain type of doing something, you know. I think I could probably be there because I was kind of raised both, you know. I could understand both sides, and it changes back and forth a lot of times on certain issues, and that's the thing, it's not black and white. But people have really just dug deep and just sought their sides. But then when you really ask a person outside of whatever parties they're in and talk about just certain things individually, more people are so aligned. It's crazy how aligned they are. It's just to find semantics, really. It's on how you word it, you know? Because if you word it incorrectly, it does not do anything. And if anything, it has an adverse effect. Like Black Lives Matter. That didn't go too well. When I first heard that, I totally understood what it meant, but I know that that's not going to really do well, because it should be Black Lives Matter too, right? That last extra word makes a big difference. But why is that not put in there? It's kind of weird, because then it seems like this is the only lives that matter to you, because that's what other people that aren't black are probably thinking. Well, what about white lives? What about brown lives? What about Asian lives? Whatever. You just open yourself up to that. And it's so stupid. It was like, why couldn't you just like, it's crazy, or defunding the police. It's like,
That was a weird one, I remember.
reallocation of funds might be a better term, but how did this stupid, it's just like, to me, it's just foolishness that is not thought through. And when you're dealing with,
Well, it's a great headline, isn't
that's
it?
my point, but it does a disservice to whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
It really does, and it doesn't take a genius. It just takes stepping back and saying, would this be the right thing? And I really I'm blown away with some of these people at such high levels, the stuff that comes out of their mouth. It's like, maybe talk to someone first and feel the crowd before you go and put it out there. It's the craziest thing. I mean, these politicians are like, want to give these stories, and I'm thinking, did you think of the story through before it comes out of your mouth? Because this can make you look really stupid, or very like you know, like you don't care about this subject because you're belittling it to this story that it happens all the time. It's like, wow. Okay, these guys are playing at the highest level, and they're playing like they're still at the lowest level. It's crazy, and the parties are so divisive that even though you know that was the stupidest thing ever said, you will support it, and you're like, why are you supporting that? You know, I don't know.
Crazy world.
I'm at a certain age where I'm not too young, I'm not too old, so it gives me a lot of confidence to see if an old dude is like, dude, you're clueless. You know, or a young person thinking, okay, you definitely don't have enough life experience to be speaking on this, even though you're articulate or whatever. You'll find out. Talk to me in 10 years, because I thought that too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then if someone that's older, you're like, you're way out of touch. So I think this is also a very good age for me too.
Yeah, it's definitely a good age. So what do you say? Where do you think your passion and purpose combine? Is that the politics, would you say, or?
It's starting to be, you know, it's starting to be. And I think it's maybe because of social media too, but that's definitely occupying a lot of space in that. Because what I see right now in social media is fitness and politics, right? I mean, that kind of dominates social media right now. It's kind of crazy. And maybe some alien stuff.
Yeah, the old alien. Yeah, that's right.
Maybe that's the platform I'll go on. You know, I'll be like, listen,
You'll be
this
the
is,
first politician up in space, and yeah.
yeah, me and Elon and Bezos.
Yeah, exactly. So my last question then, Danny. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone on to make possible. What
Yeah.
would be a memorable example of escaping your own personal limits?
Oh, winning the Olympia for sure, without a doubt. Being a smaller guy, I never thought that I would achieve what I've done in this sport. I've always loved the sport. I love the camaraderie of it, you know. I think coming from a single mom and my dad dying when I was young, I was looking at sports for mentors. And I felt like I was kind of receiving that, maybe from a coach or just another athlete that I really admire that might have had more experience than me. And I was always pretty athletic, so that helped me. That helped show me that with hard work, you can achieve certain things. With hard work, you can beat this other person. And that's why I've always liked individual sports, not so much team sports. All my brothers like a lot of team sports. To me, that's a lot of politics too, is those team sports, because I felt it. You could be better than another person, but it could be the coach's son, so he's playing over you. And there's no way in hell this guy's better than you. You start finding out early, you know, so I started going more towards individual sports, gymnastics, martial arts, breakdancing. I was one of the best breakdancers in the world.
Really?
I don't know if you didn't.
No,
I told you.
I used to love breakdancing.
Yeah, that was my generation. I was 12 years old. I was on American Bandstand, Soul Train. I toured with so many musicians.
Were you in a crew?
No,
You weren't?
I was in many crews. The thing I was good at was I was well-rounded. Because a crew, you had a crew because certain people in the crew were really good at one thing. And so when you would battle other crews, they would send out their best guy that spun on their head or another guy that did this, right? And that was a battle. I literally could do everything at a very high level.
So you're a popper and a breaker, or were you?
Right, and
Okay.
because I was a gymnast, I could do flips and martial arts, so it's like that came very easy for me. So I literally, with my younger brother, that would hold my jacket, I would literally go to Venice Beach and I would battle whole crews by myself. I'd be tired as hell. I'd be breathing hard, and they just did something. I'd go back out there and I'd hit it even better than, and I'd come back, and I'd be like, "Whew, okay," you know. And it was cool. So I was, because of that well-roundedness, I was able to sub out crews that were on high levels, that were performing with other artists, traveling with rappers and musicians. They would call me up and say, "Hey, our guy that does this hurt his leg, whatever. Do you want to step in with us?" So I got a lot of work that way.
Nice.
You know, I had a manager and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
How was your? I never really perfected the windmill, and like.
Oh, we were on another level. See, when it first came out, it was more. It originated from the East Coast, right?
Right.
With the D-boys, you know, from New York, and they were more of a stylistic, the way they dressed and just the way they moved, you know. But performance-wise, it was okay. But it was more of a how would you say, a swag to them. When
Okay.
it came to the West Coast, we were all about the athleticism of it. We would take the moves and just expand on it, and we do more power moves, more aerials and stuff. And that was right up my wheelbase because I was in martial arts and gymnastics. You know, I was already a good athlete, so I picked that. I would study videotapes over and over with a VHS player.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
just watch it over and over, and I would practice it. My mom used to turn the garage into linoleum and use the armor and shine it up so we could spin faster and everything. My mom would bring us out like drinks so we could practice. And you know, I was teaching, and my introductory to the gym was I was walking by a liquor store to play video games, and there was a gym, a little gym. They had an aerobics room with a hardwood floor, mirrors, and then the other side was the weights. And I used to pass there all the time and go, "Man, that's a cool place to practice."
Yeah, big wooden floor.
Yeah. So I would notice that no one would go in there for hours. And one day I snuck in there and had my little Pledge furniture cleaner, and I would clean up the floor, you know, so it'd be nice and smooth, and I would practice, use the mirror practice. And one day the owner of the gym caught me. But there was a bunch of kids in the daycare that was next door were watching me. You know, the daycare for the gym, they were watching me. And I became kind of popular. When the owner kicked me out, I came back a few days later to play the video games. He said, "Hey, come here." He called me over. I was like, "Oh, shit, he's gonna tell me some more shit. He already kicked me out." He gave me a job. He's like, "Listen, these parents are saying that these kids want to learn. Do we give instructions here?" So I was giving instructions at a gym in the aerobics room with all these kids, right? And the parents were paying me, and I was half splitting the money with the owner, cash. And so after I would do, I would train a bunch of kids for hours. I'd make cash money. I'd go in there, clean up, and then I would start to walk out, and I'd see the gym part. You can walk out through the aerobics part or the gym part. I started walking out through the gym parts because there's some beautiful women, with little, they used to wear the thongs back then. So I'd walk out that part and look and try to stay there as long as I can before, hey, you can't be in there, And I'd pick up some weights and do stuff. And that was the gym I ended up training at the years later when I got in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was the gym I trained at when I won my first bodybuilding show.
Was that in LA?
No, that was in Ventura County.
Okay.
Close to LA.
Right.
It's like between Malibu and Santa Barbara on the coast. And that ended up being the gym that I got kicked out of. Isn't that cool?
Well, that's funny. So what kind of music were you listening? What were some of the favorite
Back then.
artists when you were doing the breakdancing? Do you remember?
80s?
I found some old. I don't know whether they had it here, but when I was back in England, I found some of the old 80s electro albums. Did you listen to some of those?
Right.
And I'd not heard those for years, but there was that was something that we used to have in England.
Oh yeah, of course. A lot of the great artists came from there. It's a lot of new age artists too. They had that heavy beat.
Yeah.
New age, I think is what they called it at the time. New wave.
Right.
So I actually.
So you still breakdance then?
Yeah, just things that break. Yeah. But that was. I used to go on tour. I actually helped choreograph the 1984 opening ceremonies at the '84 Olympics that was here in LA at the Coliseum. 100 breakdancers spinning on their heads.
Wow.
So I have video of that, and so I was there doing that. So
Arthur Baker, that was the guy I was trying to think of. He was one of the people at the time that created some of those. Arthur Baker.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it depends how far back you go, Madonna, when she first started, I think in the '84, she had kind of a beat to her. A lot of like what they would call, I wouldn't call it techno, but it was kind of like the electronic stuff.
Yeah.
So I was used to performing at high levels. At least being on stage, I wouldn't have to risk, break my neck or something.
So when you were doing your posing, did you ever incorporate any of that stuff in it?
No, there's some athletes, especially the black athletes. They do a lot of the popping and stuff. But for me, that wasn't true. I like the true art of bodybuilding. I actually do seminars about the origins of where the poses come from. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
I want to do a coffee book. I've been talking about that for a while, but I want to be in it too. And I want to use more current pictures instead of, I could probably pull some older pictures out. But, when I traveled all over the world, all these cultures would have statues, right, that are hundreds and even thousands of years old, like in Greece and Rome. And a lot of them were with war. The poses were with war or, sport, like Nike, Olympia, in Greece. So you'd have like the discus thrower in certain poses, and you'd have like the javelin throwing, just things like that. And over thousands of years, the weapons would break off, but they'd still be in those poses.
I didn't know that's where it came from.
Well, look at the pose I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I tell people that when I teach posing, I tell them, I brought one guy up on stage, and he just had a kid, a baby. And I brought him up, he was a bodybuilder, and I said, "What's your favorite pose?" He goes, "Oh, I like the one Frank Zane does. It's like this pose right here, And I was like, "Okay, do that pose." So he does it, and he kind of just gets in the position like this, and it's kind of like, there's not a lot of energy to it. I said, "Okay." And I explained to him, one of the statues in that pose is, can't think of the Greek, one of the Greek gods, but it was them holding up their child, the firstborn,
okay.
for Zeus to bless, right? And so it's a statue of that, but the child's broken, the hands are off, but it's up like this, and that's where that pose comes from. I said, "You just had a kid." I said, "Imagine yourself taking your newborn, and you're lifting it up for God to bless." I said, "So picture that in your head, And I said, you got that? He's like, yeah. I said, now do that pose with your eyes closed. He went like this. I mean, like, people, I got chills. I was like, people are going, wow. I said, that's posing. You have to have intent behind it. You're on a stage, you're performing, you know, so you need to have that. Like when guys will get down and do that lunging pose, you know, they'll do that, and they're not quite sure where their balance is. I said, that pose is from war. Pretend you have a spear and a lion's coming to attack you, and you get down real quick and do it. And they'll get down without even thinking in an athletic position, way different body position and everything. And I said, okay. And they look at it and they're like, oh. I said, do it with intent. You have to have a story behind it.
Yeah, you know, you get why you're doing it and where your body needs to be.
Rather than
It
just
makes
like
a lot more
a mannequin, you know, it's more of like an athletic. Even the little
great,
shift
yeah.
of the hips and the balance and the twist to get most power out of it, that's the pose.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. I never thought and knew about that, but yeah, it makes a lot of people are just saying, okay, I want to get in that position. But so what is that position for? The way you say it, the balance and everything to make the move makes more sense.
Because most of the poses come from sport,
right? Yeah.
or from war, which is both athleticism. You know,
What's
it has
the
a
most
story.
muscular come from then?
The most muscular?
Is
Well,
that just a random one that they throw in there?
Yeah, that's evolved over time because that's always changed. Like if you look back in the what's his name, Grimace, how do you pronounce his name? A lot of like the guys back in like the 30s, 20s even, you know, like the strongman at the carnival, you know, were kind of like the first bodybuilders. But it was more kind of like this.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
and they would do kind of like this. It was more to show their traps, and they would do movements like that, and then, you know, it evolved from this, like Arnold would start doing it.
Right.
It's just to show the muscularity of it. And it's kind of an intimidating kind of like, you know, stance for a male, like a dog or, you know, any type of muscular creature like an ape would do, you know, when you're standing your ground.
Have you not written a book or done a
That's what I want to do,
video
is a
or something
coffee
about
book.
it? Yeah, I think that's really cool.
And I want to take like a lot of the guys' pictures, and what I want to do is it'd be nice if I could travel and go to the originals, show the original statue from Africa. There's statues from Africa, you know, and show the statues and show an athlete in great shape in that same pose with the weapons or whatever it is, juxtaposing it, you know, and kind of explaining where it comes from.
You could do like a mini movie as well. That would make a nice
Like a documentary?
Yeah, that'd be good
it.
to go with the book. Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, let's do it. I've been talking about it now for 6 years. My wife's like, you need to do this.
That would be cool.
Because
I've not heard anyone, well, maybe I'm not looking, but I've not heard anyone that's sort of
now
explaining
when I
it
first
like
came
that.
out with that, when Jane at the Fit Expo people, they're like, is there something like different or interesting you'd like to do? She's always asking me if I want to do something different or interesting or whatever. And I said, you know, I've always had this when I do the seminars and stuff, I explain to give a story of where posing and stuff comes from. And a lot of people don't know that. You know, if you look at some of these statues, like even like this statue here, it's like, oops, sorry, buddy. You know, like if this statue here like this, right? That's a single bicep pose. Well, if you look at it here like this, there's a statue of standing here like this, and this is a jug of wine they're holding like this, and it's a Greek statue. And of course the jug is gone and part of the hand's missing, but it's that cool pose.
Yeah.
And that's where that comes from, or both jugs of wine holding it up like this, you know. And I've always liked the statues, the way they did it, because it would have like almost a story in their face too, the way the sculptors would do it.
Right.
You know, it was like this, and they'd be kind of like looking down. It was just very dramatic. Just this certain tilt of the head, not too far, not too straight. And I try to mimic that because that projects on stage too.
Yeah, there's some very
just little
slight
things.
details that you either get
Right,
or you
and
don't.
then when I study like athletes, or like when I went to Spain and I saw my first bullfight and I saw the way the matadors walked and the way they moved, I was like, ooh, I'm implementing that. Because it's one thing to have a still pose, but it's also the way you carry yourself on stage. and your transitions between one pose and the other. And like with when I saw the way the matadors moved, it was very you know, how would you say, like bravado and just the energy and the machismo, you know, just the way they moved around like this, just very intent and just like that.
Yeah.
And that's how like I would try to pose, you know, just the way you do stuff. And so I use a little bit of that, you know. So there's a lot of
that's cool.
things to just
I'm
really
sure a
make
lot of people love to watch that.
because it's about power and grace.
Yeah.
And fluidity
And art.
and art,
yeah.
you know, and athleticism.
Yeah.
Which got lost, and I lost interest in the sport because it was about these big guys just going like this and the guest pose, and they would hire them to guest pose, you know, and they'd just have like heavy metal on, and they'd walk from one corner of the thing, and they go, you know, and they were kind of out of shape and fat, and I'm thinking, this is more of like the WWE type of thing, right? That's probably why it got popular, because all the pro wrestling and all that. And I was thinking, well, this sport has gone a whole different direction.
Right.
When I used to get hired to do it, I would do the music, the lights. Sometimes I have a smoke machine.
Right.
You know, just give the drama of it. So that's kind of what it went back to, though. Now you see it all the time. Some of these guys on social media, I'm like, wow, they're getting it.
Yeah.
Sometimes better than me. I was going, geez. They probably don't know the history that I'm talking about. I'm sure they would appreciate it, but man. And then when I make comments on some of them, they're like, oh, wow, Danny Hester, thank you so much. And they'll repost it on their story that I commented on it. And I was going, dude, you're good. You know? I was like, wow, I love that, you know? And then for them to even like kind of pay me a compliment that I complimented them is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming down.
That was great.
I had some fun.
Yeah, it was like, when we do it last, like a year ago? Almost?
Yeah, it was at the Fit Expo, probably.
January?
Yeah, it was quite some time ago. Yeah, it was yeah, we were upstairs in the event, so we didn't get too much time to talk. I think it was quite a quick 15 minutes.
Yeah, you did a lot of people that day, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to do it, thinking back of it, because all the athletes were there, you know. But yeah, I can talk about so many things.
I didn't know, but I didn't expect us to be talking about breakdancing. That's for sure.
Oh, I know.
I love that that was a big part of my life growing up.
That opened a lot of doors up for me, you know, as far as just performing and everything.
It sounds like it's what got you into bodybuilding.
It was, literally, yeah, right. Make that connection. I mean, everything's kind of connected, you know, and then the wrestling and everything. But definitely I used to watch this show Fame, the original one. I always wanted to do something, go to a school performing arts somehow.
Did you ever do it?
I always felt that. No.
That was always a cool school to go. Yeah, it looked like it was a cool school to go to.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason I, married my wife, because she's a singer. Yeah. You know, she's a musician, singer.
Who were the people in there? It was like Leroy was the dancer,
right?
Wasn't it?
Yeah, they tried to bring that. They even went on to Broadway, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, they did a thing of Fame, but the original was the best, for sure.
And it was probably very different at that time because of what was around at that time. Like now you look back on it and it's probably not quite the same, but then in terms of where the world was in the 80s, I guess it was...
Well, it depends on where you're at, because that genre will always be, even if I think especially entrepreneurs and people that are doing their own thing can appreciate that, because that's really what it's about, especially being in LA too. That was in New York, I believe. Yeah. But being in LA, that's people trying to hustle, you know, and sometimes I don't, when people ask me what do I do, forever since, when I was a nurse or law enforcement, after I left those, I never really knew what to tell people because I tried to do so many different things. I was interested in so many things. And that doesn't mean that, and sometimes when you do that, they don't take you serious. They think you're a jack, but the true thing is jack of trades, master of none is actually the best way to go. But
I do think, I had a chat with a guy last week called Dan Metcalf. He was in Andrew Lloyd, you know Dan? Yeah, he was Andrew Lloyd Webber, he's fitness, he's a number of things. But the way he explained it is like, well, actually, I've always enjoyed being a performer. I've always enjoyed helping people. And so my guess, without spending time on it, is there's probably a few things that connect all of the bits that you've done and where you probably are quite a specialist in something, but there's many different ways to present that, like even politics. My guess is there's a lot of the skills that you do will form a big part of your political career when you go on to do that, you know.
Right.
And so in some ways, yeah, he does a lot of different things, but in other ways, he's masters a few simple things that.
Yeah, I think because of politics, because of being an athlete, I understand what it takes to dedicate yourself to something, to understand your opponent. The artistic part of me knows that you have to read the audience, being in a performance. You need to know when you need to step it up, create more energy, chill it out, you know, so that's the performance part of me. And then also I think being the nurse and the correction officer gives me the empathy to not really dismiss other people's views. So I think all those factors in my life experience, kind of is pushing me, I think, more now towards politics. Yeah. So we'll see.
That's exciting.
Maybe I'll get there and be, you know, a multi-millionaire and not get shit done. But I'll be like, damn, it wasn't. I do another, you know, bro, it wasn't like what I thought. But hey, you know, I got some extra money to invest in whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Well, as long as you're enjoying the ride, as long as you're enjoying the ride, that's the main thing.
Yeah. That's really what it's about too. But you're always looking, you know, and sometimes it's not even what you want to do, but just to do something. That's the key. It might not be your best fit, but just try it and keep doing it. Because we all have to have a goal, because that's what gets us out of bed, you know. And if you have a few different things, that's okay too. I told Ronnie Coleman the other day, because, you know, people think, wow, he's achieved so much and he destroyed his body for it, and he's sitting there and this is what all. I said, Ronnie, I said, this might be just this chapter of your life. Who knows what you can be in the future? You know, you can be something totally different and do just as well in it. I said, so I tell people, it's like, don't give up on certain things you have in your head, but you always need to go after as far as learning about it and getting your knowledge and your how you say, putting your time in, right? And so you're always ready, because you never know when that time will come. If I would have just said, this bodybuilding is not for me, and did something totally different, like just kickboxing the whole time, if that Olympia would have came around, I wouldn't have been ready for it, you know? But that was always in the back of my head. I could always improve my physique. Not because I was getting ready for a show or had that opportunity come, but that's just what a goal of mine was. I said, if I want to be the best shooter, and just practice for myself, because I feel I have a natural skill for it. I enjoy it. I love the focus. I love the concentration with the violence. It really helps me breathe. You know, I don't know if you've ever gone shooting, but
I'd like to.
I love
next time I'm gonna have to come and.
It really is a whole different mind. People don't understand it. They think the gun violence and this and that. It's a whole different animal. I mean, you have to learn to focus in such a violent environment. You know, I teach a lot of actors that play cops and military guys for years. They've never fucking shot a real gun before. It's such a trip. But all the technical advisors on the set that teach them how to hold it and walk and everything, some of that does translate into making them a better shooter.
Well, I guess the big part of that is also just like when you go into competition, fighting or whatever, the nerves that must take over, like your skill.
Right.
Must just be a totally new level, totally whole different level.
Because sometimes if you overthink it, you're not doing as well. You have to really, for shooting, you have to be in that zone, which I love, because, you know, and then doing it on outdoors. When I talk about shooting, I'm not talking about inside an indoor range on shooting paper. I'm talking about going out in the mountains. It's beautiful, man. It's amazing. Sometimes the headset I have that protects your ears also can Bluetooth my phone, so I could play some light music behind, you know. It's really cool. I mean, it just puts you in like...
I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah, you got to come out here. Just call me out, bro. We'll go shooting.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Danny. Appreciate it.
It was awesome.
It's great to spend some time with you.
You didn't even get a word in this whole time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.